How do you control weeds in conventional soybeans? Well, we've got some good tips for you today if you want great weed control at an inexpensive price.
Seems like a whole generation ago when we last had to go conventional. We didn't have the choice of Roundup Ready soybeans or Liberty Link soybeans. And guess what? A lot of those products are still available and they still work just the same as they did before. They get certain weeds and not other weeds. So in general, you're going to be looking at combinations that you're going to have to use to get great weed control.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say, and you've probably heard us talk about this before, the 3-Pre program for soybeans. We talk about it in Roundup resistant weeds, but we also talk about it for conventional soybeans. This is absolutely the way to go because let's face it, your post-emerge options stink.
Well, at least it's better than the sunflower production we were talking about earlier where we have no post-emerge options. At least
Yep.
we have some. But I'll say this, any of those post-emerge options we don't want to use pre, and some of them you'll see labeled in different pre-emerge herbicides. We want to avoid those. Here's the products that you do want to use, and all of these you can only use pre. So we start with one of the DNAs or one of the yellows. That's Treflan or Sonlan if you're doing incorporation, and that's Prowl if you're in no-till. Those products are excellent on grass control, and when used at higher product rates, they actually do okay on some of the small-seeded broadleaves. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. That's why we have to use multiple sites of action. Then the second one we want to use is the PPOs. We want to use either Authority or Valor. Sharpen falls into that family too, and we love Sharpen, especially in front of corn or in front of wheat where we can use high rates. Unfortunately, in front of soybeans, we can only use a low rate. And with these PPOs, you can only use one of these per year. Then the third family that we've got is Metribuzin. It does a good job on small-seeded broadleaves, and that's what the majority of the weeds that we're having problems with are. There are a couple cautions whenever you're using Sencor or Metribuzin.
All right, well, the cautions are you don't want to use it in very sandy ground. So if you've got a cation exchange capacity of less than 5, we're probably going to tell you stay away from Metribuzin or just use a tiny rate, maybe a 1/12 of a pound or something like that. Okay, the other thing you got to watch out for is high pH soils. Now this isn't a bad thing, this is actually a good thing. What happens is in high pH soils, Metribuzin's more active, so you can use less. In other words, you spend less. Just cut your rate. So if you're at 7.4 or less, our recommendation with Metribuzin is 1/3 of a pound. Once your soil pH goes above 7.4, immediately cut that rate from 1/3 of a pound to 1/6 of a pound. And if you start getting over an 8, I might even cut it down to 1/8 of a pound, 1/10 of a pound, something like that. Not very much. So when I said earlier, hey, we can do this fairly inexpensively, I want to show you how. Treflan, 1.5 pints, you're probably talking $3 or $4 an acre. Metribuzin, 1/3 of a pound, $3 or $4 an acre. Valor, they've got big rebates, and depending on the company you're working with, you might find that a couple ounces, you might be talking in the range of $4, $5, $6, something like that by the time you get all the rebates back. If you want, you can bump that Valor rate, that's fine. So anyway, you've got a lot of options here. Pre-emerge, that's great. Let's talk more about those post-emerge options as well.
All right, if you don't have Roundup or Liberty, you want to look for the most broad spectrum weed control products that you've got. I would say Pursuit and Raptor would be the most broad spectrum, and next after that would be First Rate. Now you have to watch your crop rotational restrictions. You're going to get some residual out of each of those, so make sure that that's going to work for you long term.
Yeah, but hold up a second, Darren. Here's where my recommendation starts. It starts with nothing. Okay, I've used a pre, and I'm not going to plan anything for post. I'm going to wait, and I'm going to scout, and I'm going to see what I have. If I don't have the weeds that fit for Pursuit or for First Rate, I'm using something else. So that's the thing that we encourage you to do too. Just get the 3 pre's on. You're going to have 99.9% weed control with a lot of the toughest weeds. Then you can scout, see what you've got, and make your decision from there. But we've got roughly 6 or 8 different products depending on what the weed is. What I always tell people is let's focus on the worst weed first, make sure we get that under control.
Well, it's hard to know exactly what weeds are going to pop up in your conventional soybean fields. That's why it's nice to have the Ag PhD Field Guide app downloaded on your tablet or on your smartphone. It's free. You can look at a number of different weeds that we have there and the best herbicide control options for corn, soybeans, and wheat.
Well, in that Ag PhD Field Guide app, you will find our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to stop it on your farm coming up next.